The morning sun peeked through the large windows of Mrs. Harper's kindergarten classroom, casting golden rays over the brightly colored walls. The room buzzed with energy as children laughed, played, and explored their little world. Alphabet. Charts hung beside hand-drawn pictures of smiling animals, while shelves were stacked with books, puzzles, and toys. It was a place where imagination ran wild and curiosity blossomed. Mrs. Harper stood near the art table, her soft brown eyes scanning the room with warmth. She loved her job, not just because she got to teach, but because she felt like she was making a difference in these young lives. Today, however, something felt different. Amidst the cheerful chaos, one child caught her attention. Lily. Lily was a quiet girl, barely 5 years old, with curly blonde hair that framed her delicate face. She often sat alone during group activities, clutching a worn-out stuffed rabbit named Bunny. Bunny had patches sewn onto its ears and one missing button eye, but to Lily, it was perfect. Whenever someone asked about Bunny, Lily would hug it tighter and whisper, "He's my best friend." On this particular morning, Lily seemed unusually restless. Instead of joining the others at the play kitchen or building towers with blocks, she wandered around the room aimlessly. Her tiny hands fidgeted with Bunny's ears, twisting them nervously. Mrs. Harper noticed her hesitation and walked over, kneeling down to meet Lily at eye level. "Good morning, Lily," Mrs. Harper said gently, offering a warm smile. "Is everything okay?" Lily looked up, her big blue eyes searching Mrs. Harper's face. For a moment, she didn't say anything. Then, almost shyly, she nodded. "I'm okay," she murmured, though her voice wavered slightly. Mrs. Harper tilted her head, sensing there was more beneath the surface. "If you need to talk, I'm here, sweetheart. You know that, right?" Lily blinked and gave another small nod before turning away. But instead of heading toward the toy corner, she lingered by the bookshelf, running her fingers along the spines of picture books. Something about her demeanor tugged at Mrs. Harper's heartstrings. There was a heaviness in Lily's movements, a shadow behind her otherwise sweet expression. As the day went on, Mrs. Harper kept a watchful eye on her. During snack time, Lily picked at her crackers without eating them. During story time, she sat cross-legged on the carpet but stared blankly, a head lost in thought. Every now and then she'd glance toward the door, as if expecting or perhaps dreading something. By mid-morning, Mrs. Harper couldn't shake the feeling that something was weighing heavily on Lily's mind. Still, she reminded herself not to jump to conclusions. Children sometimes acted out of character when they were tired or overwhelmed. Maybe Lily was simply having an off day, but deep down, Mrs. Harper knew better. Years of teaching had taught her to trust her instincts, and right now those instincts told her that whatever was troubling Lily wasn't ordinary. Little did she know, within the next hour, 3 whispered words would change everything, for both of them. The clock ticked steadily on the wall, counting down to a moment neither Lily nor Mrs. Harper could have anticipated. As the morning wore on, the kindergarten classroom buzzed with its usual energy. Children laughed and played, their voices blending into a symphony of innocence. Mrs. Harper moved around the room, helping students with puzzles, reading stories, and offering gentle guidance where needed, but her thoughts kept drifting back to Lily. The little girl hadn't joined in any activities. Instead, she sat quietly by the bookshelf, clutching Bunny tightly. Mrs. Harper decided to check on her again. She knelt beside Lily, her voice soft and inviting. "Would you like me to read you a story?" she asked, holding up a colorful picture book about animals in the jungle. Lily hesitated for a moment, then shook her head. Her small fingers tightened around Bunny's patched ear, and she looked away, avoiding Mrs. Harper's gaze. "Lily," Mrs. Harper said gently, placing a reassuring hand on the child's shoulder. "You know you can always talk to me if something is bothering you, right? I'm here to help." For a long moment, Lily didn't respond. Then, without warning, she leaned closer, her lips trembling as though she were struggling to find the right words. Mrs. Harper tilted her head, straining to hear what Lily was about to say. The noise of the classroom faded into the background, as Lily whispered 3 words so softly they barely reached Mrs. Harper's ears. The impact was immediate. Mrs. Harper froze, her breath catching in her throat. Her heart seemed to stop for a split second before racing ahead, pounding against her chest. The cheerful hum of the classroom suddenly felt distant, muffled, as if the world had shifted beneath her feet. She stared at Lily, her mind scrambling to process what she had just heard. "What did you say, sweetheart?" Mrs. Harper asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Her hands trembled slightly as she tried to maintain her composure. She didn't want to alarm Lily or make her feel pressured to repeat herself, but deep down she already knew. Those 3 words carried a weight far beyond anything a 5-year-old should ever have to endure. Lily looked up at her, her wide blue eyes filled with a mixture of fear and trust. For a fleeting moment it seemed as though she might speak again. But then she pressed her lips together, clutching Bunny even tighter, and lowered her gaze to the floor. Whatever courage had prompted her to share those words had now retreated, leaving her silent once more. Mrs. Harper's mind raced. She wanted to ask more questions to understand exactly what Lily meant. Yet she also knew that pushing too hard could do more harm than good. Instead, she took a deep breath, forcing herself to stay calm for Lily's sake. "Thank you for telling me," she said softly, brushing a strand of hair from Lily's face. "You're very brave." The rest of the classroom continued oblivious to the tension unfolding between teacher and student. Children laughed as they built towers with blocks, sang songs during circle time, and shared snacks at the tiny tables. To everyone else, it was just another ordinary day. But for Mrs. Teacher Harper, the air felt heavy, charged with an unspoken urgency. She glanced toward the clock on the wall, its steady ticking mocking her indecision. What should she do next? Should she pull Lily aside for a private conversation? Or was it better to wait until later when things were quieter? Every instinct told her to act immediately, yet she hesitated, unsure of how to proceed without causing further distress. As the minutes ticked by, Mrs. Harper made a decision. She would keep Lily close for the rest of the morning, ensuring she felt safe and supported. At the same time, she began mentally preparing herself for the steps she knew she'd need to take. Those 3 whispered words had changed everything, and there was no turning back now. Mrs. Harper's mind was a whirlwind as she tried to focus on the rest of the morning's activities. On the outside, she appeared calm and collected, guiding her students through their lessons with her usual warmth. But inside, her thoughts were racing. Those 3 whispered words from Lily echoed in her mind like a storm that refused to settle. She knew she couldn't ignore them. She had to do something. But what? And how? Lily stayed close to Mrs. Harper after their brief conversation, almost as if she didn't want to be alone. The little girl clung to Bunny, her eyes darting around the room as though searching for something or maybe avoiding it. Mrs. Harper noticed how Lily flinched whenever another adult entered the classroom, even if it was just the principal stopping by to drop off new art supplies. It was subtle, but it didn't go unnoticed. During snack time, Mrs. Harper sat beside Lily at one of the tiny tables, keeping her tone light and casual. "Bunny looks like he's having fun today," she said, nodding toward the stuffed rabbit. "Do you think he likes crackers too?" Lily gave a small smile, holding Bunny up to pretend he was eating. For a moment she seemed like any other child, lost in the magic of make-believe. But then her smile faded and she looked down at her uneaten snack. Her fingers picked at the edges of the cracker, crumbling it into tiny pieces. Mrs. Harper leaned in slightly, her voice soft but steady. "Lily, can you tell me more about what you said earlier? I really want to understand." Lily hesitated, her lips trembling again. She glanced toward the door, then back at Mrs. Harper. When she finally spoke, her words came out in fragments, disjointed and hard to follow. Each sentence felt like a puzzle piece, and Mrs. Harper carefully pieced them together in her mind. The picture forming wasn't clear yet, but it was enough to send chills down her spine. Every instinct screamed at Mrs. Harper to act immediately, but she forced herself to stay patient. She knew she couldn't lead Lily or put words into her mouth. It was crucial to let the child speak freely. At the same time, she couldn't shake the growing sense of dread. What if she waited too long? What if someone found out she'd known and hadn't done anything? By lunchtime, Mrs. Harper had made her decision. As the children settled onto their mats for nap time, she quietly asked her assistant teacher to keep an eye on the class while she stepped into the hallway. Her hands trembled as she pulled out her phone and dialed the number for Child Protective Services, CPS. Taking a deep breath, she explained the situation as calmly as she could, careful not to reveal too much over the phone. "I don't know all the details yet," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I think this is serious. I need someone to come talk to her to figure out what's going on." The person on the other end assured her they would send someone right away. Hanging up, Mrs. Harper leaned against the wall, her knees feeling weak. She had done the right thing. She knew that. But the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on her shoulders. What if Lily's family reacted badly? What if things got worse before they got better? Back in the classroom, Lily lay on her mat, Bunny tucked under her arm. Her eyes were closed, but Mrs. Harper could tell she wasn't asleep. The teacher knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You're safe here, Lily," she whispered. "I promise." As the afternoon dragged on, Mrs. Harper kept a protective eye on Lily, ensuring she felt secure. She answered questions from curious colleagues with vague responses, saying only that Lily seemed a bit upset and needed extra attention. Inside, however, her heart was pounding. She kept replaying those 3 whispered words in her head, trying to prepare herself for whatever might come next. When the CPS worker arrived later that day, Mrs. Harper greeted them with a mixture of relief and anxiety. This was the first step toward helping Lily, but it was also the beginning of something far bigger than she could have imagined. The arrival of the CPS worker marked a turning point, one that sent ripples through the otherwise calm afternoon. Mrs. Harper greeted the visitor, a kind-faced woman named Ms. Carter, with a quiet nod, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. They exchanged a few hushed words in the hallway before stepping into an empty corner of the classroom, where Lily sat quietly coloring with crayons. Bunny lay beside her, its patched ears resting on the table. Ms. Carter knelt down to Lily's level, offering a warm smile. "Hi there," she said softly. "My name is Ms. Carter. I'm here to talk to you for a little bit, okay? Is that all right?" Lily glanced up, her blue eyes wide and uncertain. She looked at Mrs. Harper, seeking reassurance. The teacher gave her a small, encouraging nod. "It's okay, Lily. Ms. Carter is very nice. You can tell her anything you want." With some hesitation, Lily agreed. Together they moved to a quieter space, a cozy reading nook tucked away behind a bookshelf, where they wouldn't be disturbed. Mrs. Harper stayed close by, watching from a distance as Ms. Carter gently coaxed Lily into conversation. Her heart ached as she saw the fear flickering in Lily's eyes, but she reminded herself that this was necessary. This was the only way to help. Over the next hour, pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. Ms. Carter asked open-ended questions, letting Lily guide the conversation at her own pace. At first, the little girl was hesitant, speaking in short, fragmented sentences. But slowly she opened up, revealing details that painted a troubling picture. Each word felt like a heavy stone, dropped into a still pond, sending shockwaves through everyone who listened. Mrs. Harper couldn't hear everything from where she stood, but what she did catch made her stomach churn. Phrases like "he gets mad" and "it hurts" slipped out between Lily's trembling lips, each one confirming the worst fears swirling in Mrs. Harper's mind. Yet despite the gravity of the situation, Ms. Carter remained calm and patient, never pushing too hard or interrupting. She simply let Lily speak, nodding occasionally and offering gentle encouragement. As the conversation continued, Lily grew more comfortable, or perhaps resigned, and began sharing specific incidents. She described moments when loud voices filled the house, when doors slammed shut, and when Bunny became her only source of comfort during long, sleepless nights. There were no graphic details, nothing beyond what a child could articulate, but the implications were clear enough to leave both adults deeply unsettled. When the discussion finally ended, Lily returned to the main part of the classroom, clutching Bunny tightly once again. Mrs. Harper approached Miss Carter, her face pale and drawn. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ms. Carter sighed, her expression somber. "We'll need to investigate further," she explained. "But based on what Lily shared, it's likely will involve law enforcement. We have to ensure she's safe, Mrs. Harper. That's our priority." Mrs. Harper nodded, though her chest felt tight with worry. Will her family know about this?" she asked hesitantly. "They will," Ms. Carter replied. "But don't worry. We'll handle everything carefully. For now, just keep doing what you're doing, keeping her safe and supported." Later that evening, after the children had gone home and the classroom was tidied up, Mrs. Harper sat, alone at her desk, staring at the stack of papers in front of her without really seeing them. Her mind kept replaying every interaction she'd had with Lily, the whispered confession, the fragmented stories, the frightened glances toward the door. It all felt surreal, like something out of a nightmare. Yet amid the heaviness, there was also a flicker of hope. By speaking up, Lily had taken the first step toward breaking free from whatever shadows loomed over her life. And while the road ahead would undoubtedly be difficult, Mrs. Harper knew that silence wasn't an option, not when a child's safety was at stake. As she turned off the lights and locked the classroom door behind her, Mrs. Harper whispered, a silent promise to herself. "No matter what happens, I'll make sure Lily knows she's not alone." The days that followed felt like a blur for Mrs. Harper. News of Lily's situation spread cautiously among the school staff, though details were kept vague to protect her privacy. Whispers filled the teacher's lounge during breaks, and concerned glances were exchanged, but no one dared ask too many questions. The weight of what had happened hung over the entire school, casting a shadow even in the brightly decorated hallways. Lily didn't return to class immediately after the CPS visit. Instead, she was taken to a safe place, a foster home where she could begin healing under the care of trained professionals. Mrs. Harper missed her presence in the classroom. The absence of Lily's quiet figure sitting by the bookshelf left an emptiness that couldn't be filled by any amount of colorful posters or cheerful chatter from the other children. Every time the door opened, Mrs. Harper found herself half expecting to see Lily walk in, Bunny clutched tightly in her arms. Meanwhile, authorities moved swiftly to investigate. A team visited Lily's family home, speaking with her parents and gathering evidence. On the surface, they appeared ordinary, working-class people who seemed surprised and defensive when questioned about their daughter's claims. "She must have misunderstood something," Lily's mother insisted, her voice trembling as she held back tears. "We love our daughter more than anything." But as the investigation deepened, cracks began to show. Neighbors shared stories of raised voices late at night and strange bruises on Lily's arms that had been dismissed as playground accidents. Medical records revealed patterns that couldn't be ignored. And then there were the interviews with Lily herself, conducted gently but thoroughly by specialists trained to work with young children. Slowly, irrefutable truths emerged, painting a heartbreaking picture of what life had been like behind closed doors. Back at school, Mrs. Harper attended meetings and hearings alongside CPS workers and law enforcement officials. She recounted everything she knew: the whispered words, the fragmented sentences, the subtle signs she'd noticed in the weeks leading up to that fateful morning. Each retelling felt like reopening a wound, but she reminded herself why it mattered. This wasn't just about uncovering the truth. It was about giving Lily a chance at a better future. Through it all, Mrs. Harper wrestled with conflicting emotions. Relief washed over her whenever she thought about Lily being safe now, far away from whatever dangers lurked at home. But guilt lingered too. Guilt for not noticing sooner, for not doing more before those three whispered words changed everything. She replayed moments in her mind, wondering if she'd missed clues or failed to act quickly enough. One evening, after another long day of meetings, Mrs. Harper received an update from Ms. Carter. "Lily is adjusting well," she said, her tone softening. "It's going to take time, but she's starting to open up more. Her new foster family is wonderful. They're patient and loving." Hearing this brought tears to Mrs. Harper's eyes. For the first time since that morning, she allowed herself to feel a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, Lily would find happiness again. Maybe the little girl who once clung to Bunny for comfort would learn to trust the world around her. Still, justice wasn't served overnight. Court dates were set, legal proceedings dragged on, and the community braced itself for the outcome. Rumors swirled outside the school gates, with parents whispering about what might have happened. But through it all, Mrs. Harper remained steadfast. She refused to speculate or share private information, focusing instead on supporting Lily however she could. On the nights when sleep eluded her, Mrs. Harper thought about how brave Lily had been. At such a young age, she had found the courage to speak up, to break the silence that so often trapped others in similar situations. It was a reminder that even the smallest voices could spark change, if only someone was willing to listen. And so, as the case unfolded and the pieces fell into place, Mrs. Harper held on to one truth. Lily's bravery had started something important. No matter how difficult the road ahead might be, it was a step toward healing, and toward ensuring that no child ever had to face such darkness alone again. The courtroom was quiet, almost unnervingly so, as Lily's case unfolded. Rows of wooden benches stretched out beneath the high ceiling, and the air carried a heaviness that made it hard to breathe. Mrs. Harper sat near the back, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She had never been inside a courtroom before, and the sterile atmosphere felt worlds away from the warmth of her kindergarten classroom. Yet here she was, a witness to something far bigger than herself. Lily's parents sat at the front, their faces pale but composed. They wore clothes that looked too formal for them, as if borrowed or hastily purchased for the occasion. At first they maintained their innocence, insisting that Lily's words had been misunderstood. "She's imaginative," her father said. During his testimony, his voice steady but tinged with frustration. "Kids her age say things they don't mean all the time." But the evidence told a different story. Photographs, medical reports, and testimonies from neighbors painted a picture that couldn't be ignored. One neighbor recounted hearing angry shouts late at night, while another described seeing Lily flinch whenever her father raised his voice. The prosecutor presented each piece methodically, leaving no room for doubt. By the end of the second day, even Lily's parents seemed to realize the walls were closing in. Lily didn't testify in person. Her young age spared her from facing her parents directly, but her words were shared through the professionals who had spoken with her. A child psychologist took the stand, explaining how Lily had described moments of fear and pain in heartbreaking detail. She used phrases like, "He gets mad and it hurts," and the psychologist said gently, addressing the judge. "These aren't just random statements. They're consistent with what we see in cases of abuse." As the trial progressed, Mrs. Harper found herself watching Lily's mother closely. The woman often dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, whispering urgently to her husband during breaks. There were moments when she seemed genuinely distraught, but other times when her expression hardened, almost defiant. It was confusing, unsettling, even for someone like Mrs. Harper, who prided herself on understanding people. How could someone capable of such love also cause so much harm? By the final day of the hearing, the tension in the room was palpable. The judge listened carefully as closing arguments were made, his face unreadable. When he finally delivered the verdict, the word "guilty" echoed like a thunderclap. Lily's parents were sentenced to prison terms, their lives forever altered by the choices they had made. As bailiffs led them away, Mrs. Harper caught a glimpse of Lily's mother turning back toward the gallery, her eyes searching desperately for someone, perhaps her daughter, perhaps forgiveness. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered, eager for sound bites and headlines. Mrs. Harper slipped away unnoticed, wanting nothing more than to return to the familiarity of her classroom. But as she walked to her car, she thought about Lily. Where was she now? Was she safe? Happy? Healing? A few days later, Mrs. Harper received an invitation to visit Lily in her new foster home. Her heart raced as she drove there, unsure of what to expect. When she arrived, she was greeted by a warm, cheerful couple who introduced themselves as Sarah and Mark. Their home was cozy, filled with sunlight and the smell of freshly baked cookies. And there, sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, was Lily. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Lily looked up, her blue eyes meeting Mrs. Harper's. A small smile tugged at the corners of her mouth. "Hi, Mrs. Harper," she said, softly, holding Bunny close. Mrs. Harper knelt down, tears welling in her eyes. "Hi, sweetheart," she replied, her voice trembling. "I've missed you." They spent the afternoon together, talking and laughing like old friends. Lily showed Mrs. Harper her favorite toys and proudly displayed a drawing she'd made, a bright yellow sun surrounded by flowers. For the first time in weeks, Mrs. Harper felt a sense of peace. Lily still had a long road ahead, but she was safe now, and that was everything. As Mrs. Harper left the house that evening, she glanced back at Lily, waving goodbye from the doorway. In that moment, she knew the battle had been worth it. Justice wasn't perfect, and scars would remain. But Lily's courage had changed everything, not just for herself, but for everyone who believed in the power of speaking up. Months passed, and life began to settle into a new rhythm for Lily. Her foster parents, Sarah and Mark, poured their hearts into creating a safe and loving environment for her. The once shy little girl who clung to Bunny with trembling hands started to blossom in ways no one could have imagined. Slowly but surely, the fear that had shadowed her tiny frame began to lift, replaced by glimpses of joy and laughter. Therapy played a crucial role in Lily's healing journey. Every week she met with a kind therapist named Ms. Evelyn, who specialized in helping children process trauma. Their sessions were filled with games, drawings, and storytelling, activities designed to help Lily express herself without feeling overwhelmed. At first, Lily hesitated, often retreating into silence or clutching Bunny as if he were her shield. But over time, she grew more comfortable, sharing bits and pieces of her past through crayon sketches and whispered words. One day, during a session, Lily drew a picture of a house surrounded by tall trees. In the corner of the page was a small figure holding hands with two larger figures. When Ms. Evelyn asked about it, Lily smiled shyly. "That's me," she said, pointing to the little figure. "And those are Sarah and Mark." Ms. Evelyn nodded, her voice warm. "It looks like you're building something really special here, Lily." Lily beamed at that, her eyes lighting up in a way they hadn't before. It was a small moment, but it spoke volumes. For the first time in what felt like forever, Lily was beginning to feel like part of a family, a real one. Back at school, Mrs. Harper checked in regularly, watching as Lily slowly reintegrated into the classroom routine. She still brought Bunny everywhere she went, but now he seemed less like a lifeline and more like a cherished companion. During art projects, Lily would proudly show off her creations, eager to share them with her teacher and classmates. Her laughter grew louder, her smiles wider, and her curiosity rekindled. But healing wasn't linear. There were still moments when Lily withdrew, her bright demeanor dimming unexpectedly. Sometimes loud noises or sudden movements would startle her, sending her running for comfort. On those days, Mrs. Harper would kneel beside her, offering gentle reassurance. "You're safe here, Lily," she'd whisper. "Always remember that." Despite these setbacks, progress was undeniable. One afternoon during story time, Lily raised her hand to answer a question, a simple act that might have gone unnoticed by others, but meant the world to Mrs. Harper. It was a sign that Lily was finding her voice again, not just in whispers, but in bold, confident tones. The community also rallied around Lily in unexpected ways. Parents organized fundraisers to support local child advocacy programs, inspired by her bravery. Teachers attended workshops on recognizing signs of abuse, determined to prevent similar situations in the future. Even the children, unaware of the specifics, showed kindness in their own small ways, inviting Lily to join games and sharing snacks during lunch. By the end of the school year, Lily stood alongside her classmates for the annual spring performance. Dressed in a bright yellow dress, she sang along with the group, her voice ringing out clearly despite her initial nerves. As Mrs. Harper watched from the audience, Tears streamed down her face, not of sadness, but of pride. This little girl, who had faced unimaginable darkness, was learning to shine again. Justice may not have erased all the scars, but it had given Lily a chance to heal, to grow, and to dream of brighter days ahead. And though the road was long, every step forward was a victory worth celebrating. For Lily, for Mrs. Harper, and for everyone touched by her story, hope had taken root. And hope, they realized, was the most powerful force of all. As the years went by, Lily continued to grow, not just in height but in strength and resilience. The once timid child who had whispered 3 life-changing words to her kindergarten teacher blossomed into a vibrant, confident young girl. Her foster parents, Sarah and Mark, officially adopted her, giving her a permanent place in their loving home. Bunny, though now worn and frayed beyond recognition, still held pride of place on her bed, a reminder of how far she'd come. Mrs. Harper remained a constant presence in Lily's life, checking in during parent-teacher conferences and celebrating milestones alongside her family. On Lily's 8th birthday, she received a handmade card from Mrs. Harper with a heartfelt note. "To Lily, the bravest person I know, never stop shining." That evening, Lily placed the card carefully on her dresser, next to a framed picture of her and Mrs. Harper taken at school. It was one of her most treasured possessions. The impact of Lily's courage rippled far beyond her own story. Inspired by her case, the school implemented new policies aimed at protecting vulnerable children. Teachers underwent mandatory training sessions on identifying signs of abuse and creating safe spaces for students to speak up. Posters with hotline numbers and resources were displayed prominently in classrooms, ensuring no child ever felt trapped in silence again. Mrs. Harper often reflected on how much had changed since that fateful morning. She realized that teaching wasn't just about lessons or grades. It was about being there for her students in ways they might not even understand until later in life. Lily's bravery reminded her why she chose this profession in the first place, to make a difference, however small, in the lives of others. One crisp autumn afternoon, several years after the trial, Mrs. Harper stood at the front of her classroom, addressing a new group of kindergartners. Among them was a shy boy named Ethan, who reminded her so much of Lily. He rarely spoke, preferring instead to sit quietly with his stuffed dinosaur. One day, after noticing him lingering near the door, during recess she knelt beside him. "Hey, Ethan," she said softly, "do you want to talk about anything?" Ethan hesitated, clutching his dinosaur tightly. Then, almost imperceptibly, he nodded. As Mrs. Harper listened patiently, she felt a familiar surge of determination. No matter how daunting the task ahead might be, she knew what she had to do. Because of Lily, she understood the power of listening and the importance of acting when it mattered most. Years later, as an adult, Lily would look back on her childhood with gratitude rather than pain. She credited her journey not just to her adoptive parents or therapists, but also to Mrs. Harper, the teacher who had believed in her when she needed it most. In interviews and community talks, she shared her story openly, hoping to inspire others to find their voices too. "Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared," she'd say, her voice steady and strong. "It means speaking up even when you are." Her words resonated deeply, touching hearts across the community. Schools began naming programs after her, initiatives designed to empower children and protect them from harm. A scholarship fund was established in her honor, supporting kids like her who dreamed of brighter futures despite difficult beginnings. And, through it all, Mrs. Harper watched with quiet pride. She knew that while scars might fade, the lessons learned never truly disappeared. Lily's story had taught everyone, teachers, parents, neighbors, that every child deserved safety, love, and a chance to thrive. In the end, it wasn't just about justice or healing. It was about hope. Hope that whispered words could lead to action, that brokenness could give way to wholeness, and that even in the darkest moments, light could break through. For Lily, for Mrs. Harper, and for countless others whose lives were touched along the way, this truth became a guiding star, a reminder that bravery, no matter how small, could change the world.